Hello guys. So this is the notes for Crito, right? Crito by Plato. And this is actually one of my most famous no, not my most famous, sorry. This is one of a few I think underrated dialogues of Plato, but one of my favorites at least because it gets into the concept of justice, and you'll see why Socrates is considered like one of the kings, or pinned as the most you know inspirational figure in the history of philosophy and ethics, right? So we will see this. And so in Crito, Socrates is awaiting death by execution. Spoilers alert, he dies by hemlock, which is poison. Yes. And he is visited by a good friend of his named Crito. Now, no, he didn't die in Crito, okay? He died in the Phaedo death scene. And so Crito is a really good friend of his, right? And now Crito was able to visit him because he was familiar with the guard, or he kind of just bribed the guard, right? And so Crito says, or Crito sees that Socrates is, calm. He's calmly accepting his faith, and he says that other men in similar situations to that of Socrates would react with despair. They would freak out. They would panic, right? Regardless of their age. However, Crito, being a good friend, or at least trying to be a good friend, makes an effort to convince Socrates to escape. He's really trying to get him to escape. And this is for several reasons. He says that if Socrates refuses to escape, many will believe that Crito and his friends valued their wealth over Socrates' life. And Crito emphasizes that public perception does matter, right? Because he argues that the masses, or the population, or at least the public, is capable of causing harm to individuals. I mean, we could see this in modern day 2025, right? I could list examples like cancel culture. Cancel culture. If you say one bad thing online, then your career is, done, right? So something like that. Crito has friends in Thessaly, which is a city, by the way, who will protect Socrates and will ensure his safety. And Crito argues that Socrates must not die yet because he has a duty as a father to raise and educate his sons. And if he doesn't escape, he would be abandoning them. And so, really quickly, these are my three favorite sayings from Socrates. First, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I believe this was in Apology, right? Second, wealth does not bring about excellence, but excellence makes wealth and everything else good for men, both individually and collectively. And I believe this was in Crito. Note that this was not said by Crito. Okay, this was said by Socrates, but this was in Crito. Sorry about that. And Socrates also says that a man's greatest possession is his virtue and justice. Then again, Crito, Crito's, Crito views Socrates' refusal to escape as an act of cowardice, and it's inconsistent with his lifelong pursuit of virtue. So he's basically saying, how could you talk so much about philosophy and virtue and wisdom and how you're so dedicated to it, but yet you are accepting death, which interrupts his lifelong pursuit. However, Socrates qua Socrates, which is just Socrates as Socrates, says that the public opinion doesn't matter much, for he emphasizes the views of the wise over the many. He says that public opinion shouldn't dictate morality, right? And so, regardless of what the public say, it shouldn't have effect on what's right or wrong, right? I mean, thousands of people can say that murdering a kid is right, but that doesn't mean it's right, right? And so Socrates also remains strong in his principles. He values justice and adherence to the law over personal survival or benefits. And Socrates is concerned about acting in a way that contradicts his teachings and moral values. We see a dilemma, however, tension between personal loyalty to friends and family and adherence to ethical and civic principles. For example, let's say you are a judge and you either have the ability to condemn one of your family members that were charged of murder, and let's say you do know that you knew that they committed murder. So are you going to condemn them or let them go? Right? I mean, they are your family member. You do love them, right? Because they're family, right? But are you going to stick true to those ethical and moral principles, which are the foundations of a city, right? The law. And Crito is such a good friend. We see this as, his plea is deeply personal and he's trying everything to convince Socrates to escape. And so these are a few quotes just to why, my dear Crito, should we care so much for the opinion of the many? That is from Socrates. And would, O Crito, that the multitude could effect the greatest evils, that they might also effect the greatest good, for then it would be well. So Socrates also says opinions should be respected based on the wisdom and expertise of the person holding them, not their popularity, right? Just because 1,000 people say, oh, blah, 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 they could still be wrong, right? And so just as ignoring the expert harms the body, ignoring those who understand justice harms the soul. The part of oneself that becomes better through justice and worse through injustice, right? So if I don't listen to, a fitness trainer, then I could really harm myself, right? Just as I don't listen to the wise man, I could really harm my soul and be ignorant, right? And so Socrates argues that life can not be truly lived well with a body that is diseased or impaired. Life cannot be truly lived well if the soul is impaired by injustice. And Crito agrees, and the soul is greater in value than the body, and its health is determined by justice. Then again, Socrates, being absolutely the man he is, right? He says that the goal is not merely to live, but to live well, right? Wow. So living well means living honorably and justly, and this principle ought remains unchanged no matter what, right? Living well means to be virtuous, to be just, right? And Socrates says injustice is never acceptable under any circumstances, and committing injustice could never be honorable or good. Sorry, I forgot to put the N right here. It's supposed to be never, by the way. So even in the face of severe consequences, such as death or suffering, injustice remains evil and disgraceful, right? Two wrongs don't make a right. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of that before. And justice, he says, must have priority over all practical concerns, including that of survival. The inquiry begins with the principle that injustice is always unacceptable, and Socrates rejects any action that would violate his commitment to justice, regardless of personal consequences, right? Nobody is above the law. Rational deliberation and adherence to principles are the ultimate guides for action. That is why Socrates believes all his actions are guided by reason. Right? And so he argues that by attempting to escape, Socrates, would harm the laws and the city, undermining the own authority of them. And if judgments passed by the state are disregarded, then the foundation of the city collapses. Socrates implicitly agreed to abide by their authority by choosing to live in Athens. He never sought exile or departure, even though Athens allowed dissatisfied citizens to leave. The laws claim they gave him being, nurtured him, and educated him. Just as one must respect and obey one's parents, citizens must honor and obey their country and its laws. The law asserts two obligations. One, a citizen must either obey the laws, or persuade the state if they believe the laws are unjust. This is a good point, right? Because Socrates shows us the implicit agreement between citizens and the state. Citizens who remain in a state consent to its laws and must either obey or persuade the state to change its practices. Socrates asserts the primacy of justice over everything else. He says that it's more valuable than his children's upbringing, his personal life and comfort, the opinions of others. Thus, escaping would undermine his very own teachings, which concludes him as a hypocrite, right? And Socrates is not a hypocrite, right? He's staying true to his values, right? He's doing the right thing because it is right, right? And that's amazing because a lot of people intuitively might say, well, if I know I'm not guilty, then I'm just to escape. Well, Socrates says no, right? And he makes this argument that you still lived in this country and you must obey the principles and laws, right? No matter what, injustice is never acceptable. For example, just because a stranger killed your family, killing that stranger is no more better or worse than that stranger killing your family. Because injustice is never right to commit. You can't fight evil with evil, or you can't fight injustice with injustice. This is like, wow, this is one of the most important ethical and moral lessons um, that you were probably taught, right? And it probably and it originates in the teachings of Socrates and many other ethical teachings in philosophy, right? And next up, I'll actually be reading Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. I'm really excited to get into that. But I will start that in the summer. Unfortunately, I do have school, but don't worry, that's not going to hinder my ability to upload. But thank you guys.